Okay, thank you. Yeah, I could be down there in that 80-degree weather, or yeah. Up here you use black golf balls so you can find them in the snow. But, no, I do play golf, and I actually received a word. If any of you know who Leonard Ravenhill was, Leonard gave me a word to play golf. Nobody believes that about Leonard Ravenhill, that he would ever tell anyone that, but he did. He told me I need to play golf. I'm a workaholic. He said, you need this game. It was involved in another thing. Then Bob Jones had told me the same thing about 10 minutes before Leonard did. And I was telling a friend of mine that we were on our way out to see Oral Roberts, and just a few months before he passed away, and we're going to spend the day with Oral. And I told my assistant that, my VP, and he didn't believe it. He said, no way Leonard Ravenhill would ever give anyone a word like that. He said, maybe Bob, but not Leonard. And we get out there, and we're eating lunch with Oral, and he reaches over, grabs my arm, and he says, you need to play golf. Golf will save your life. And so my assistant started believing me. But I figured, you could either go through the great tribulation to be purified or play golf. And 2 Corinthians 13 says, test yourselves to see if you're in the faith. I don't know of a better way. And I can tell if someone's a Christian in about 3 holes. And Ray Hughes used to designate cuss holes. And then Ray used to cheat so bad. We got on to him when he got a hole in one and wrote down 0. 0. But no, it is a great game, but I'm just trying to describe something to you may not know exists. I was up in Alaska. They were playing ice golf out on these frozen lakes, and it was interesting. Anyway, to the message. All that was free. You did not pay for that. So, but this coming week we have a little gathering of prophetic people. It's a prophetic gathering. First one we've done. We quit having conferences at Charlotte. We're having gatherings. The Lord told us, he said, you need to gather, but it's time to quit conferring, which is what a conference is. Time to quit talking. You got to do it. And so we're having kind of it's going to be more like an open mic. If people that are hearing things, especially on national and international levels, and I'm sure there'll be some, some speaking, some releasing and things like that, but we've really got to hear God now. And our special focus this coming week at our place at Heritage is the Sons of Issachar anointing. And I'd started praying for that many years ago because I felt like we were hearing from God but not getting the timing on much. And you remember, Sons of Issachar were those who knew the times and knew what Israel should do. And we get a lot of words but don't know when they're going to happen. Occasionally we will get timing. But when I did that, the Lord said he would give it to me, but we would have to receive it the same way that Issachar did. And in Genesis 49, when Jacob prayed over Issachar, he said, Issachar is a strong donkey laying down between the sheepfolds. When he saw that a resting place was good and that the land was pleasant, he bowed his shoulder to bear burdens and became a slave at forced labor. Now, I think I shared this with you last time, how I was seeking that. And that he said, the way you get is you become a slave. You got to be a servant. You got to do things other people won't do or don't want to do. And that's when he gave us the heritage property to restore and certain people to help restore that others didn't want it. He said, you've got to do this, but I still have not received that Sons of Issachar anointing. But I've received promises it's coming. It's coming. I'm hoping it comes this week. We really need it. And desperately need, I think, to not only hear more clearly and more specifically, but really get the times on these things. But, you never pass one of God's tests with a perfect score. Even though what I was doing, he calls slavery, I had a great time doing it. But I went through almost 7 years with no prophetic revelation. And that's okay. I spend that time seeking the Lord in the Word and administrating, doing the stuff I was supposed to do, writing some books and things. It's not all about prophetic revelation, but I really got almost zero prophetic revelations for 7 years. And it was the second 7-year period that I had done that. And at the end of the first one was 1987 is when he gave me a 2.5-day prophetic vision of things to come, which I wrote about in a book called The Harvest. And a lot of that's come to pass now. I think 2/3 to 3/4 of what I was shown there has already come to pass. And I think you can see a timeline in it now. I went back and reread it last year, and I could see the timeline I'd never been able to see before in the way these things are unfolding. But now I'm looking for more, and I've had some incredible experiences. I think some of the best I've ever had, some of the most important, but we're still lacking that timing. Still lacking that Sons of Issachar. And they had 200 men. We're the Sons of Issachar. And I don't think there are that many who are going to have that gift, but we've really got to pursue it. And I'm just, if there's one of you here or two of you here who are called to that, we are in desperate need for that company, that tribe within Israel to take its place. But not just to have the timing on what's going to happen, but wisdom. What do you do with this revelation? Okay, if this is going to happen at this time, what do you do with that? And so these are the times. And I was talking to Larry this morning. I've been getting emergency over and over. 9/11, which in the U.S. is the emergency call number. Hit 911. And of course, the big attack on the World Trade Center happened on 911. And I think it was a wake-up call to us, an emergency. We have really backslidden as a nation. And but I've been getting it a whole lot lately. And I say lately, I'm saying within the last week. It's just been really everywhere. So something, I think, is coming down. Larry was getting the same thing. But these are things we get to go through. Through many tribulations, you enter the kingdom of God. So in every tribulation, there is a doorway to the kingdom. The whole earth is going to enter into the kingdom through the great tribulation. It really is going to be the doorway to the kingdom. When we're going to see Isaiah 11 and other scriptures fulfilled of the lion lying down with the lamb again, and the Lord's going to restore the earth to the original condition it was created to be, and original paradise it was created to be. Now, this is one thing that shocked me. I'm going to get to the message, but I want to. All last year, I worked on this documentary. That did I mention it last time I was here? When I was working on a documentary with. Yeah, it was. It's showing now, and this Sunday night is a segment that my daughter and I are in. It's called Preacher's Daughter. But it's produced by James Cameron, who's he did Titanic and Avatar and he and Arnold Schwarzenegger, the main producers, Jerry Weintraub, but they brought a who's who of actors and actresses, and Matt Damon, Harrison Ford, Don Cheadle, Ian Somerhalder. I mean, just a who's who, and I don't even know all of them, but it's like an all-star cast. Well, it's all about climate change. And I'm the white, Southern, evangelical Christian who is a climate change skeptic. Yeah, I'm not saying a denier, but I'm really skeptical of this, and for a lot of reasons. Well, they thought, well, we're going to tape this man's conversion to being a believer in climate change, and went the other way big time. And it was hard, though, because I'm the only one. And you can't believe the pressure they put on. They flew in the top climate scientists in the world, and to be honest with you, I just wasn't impressed. I was shocked at some of their, I said, if you don't have more substance behind what you're saying than this. And then, of course, a lot came out of how the numbers were being cooked. They were taking temperature readings in asphalt parking lots. They were just, all this. And the more I got into it, I went into it about 60% a skeptic and 40% open. I just said, if this is true, I want to know it. If it's not true, I want to know it. I just want the truth. I didn't care which way it went, but I said, if there's something to this. Now, you in Canada, you in this region are especially impacted by that, because this is what they're using to deny things like the Keystone Pipeline. And so, anyway, they fly us all over the place, and we do all-day taping sessions. And but I remember with this one scientist, they had me doing a whole day worth of taping in Apalachicola Bay, where the oyster population is. This has a point to it, by the way. But I didn't know this about oysters, but they live in salt water, but they have to have so much fresh water to breed. So they'll live near the entry of lakes or rivers or whatever into the ocean where they breed. And the oysters have been dying, and the greatest bay for reaping oysters maybe in the world, Apalachicola Bay, and they were all blaming it on climate change. So they bring in this top scientist, and she's just lecturing me all day on why this climate change. And I just kept saying, I think there's something else to this. There are other factors. And then they made us go out on a boat with oystermen, and they've got boats circling us with cameras, and the crews everywhere. And my whole comeback, I knew the guy driving the cameraman around in the other boat was a climate change skeptic, because I talked to him on the dock. So they would ask me something, I'd yell over to him, "Hey, Steve, what do you think of this?" He said, "It's a bunch of," So that was my comeback all day. And then the next day they let us interview some old oystermen, been oystermen for 30 or 40 years on that bay. I asked the first one, I said, I want to ask each of you two questions. I said, what do you think is causing this, and what do you think is the answer, the solution? First one says, well, the Corps of Engineers cut this corridor into the bay and let all the salt water from the Gulf of Mexico in. That changed the salinity of the whole bay. I said, man, that doesn't sound like climate change. The next one, I said, what do you think? And he said, well, what he said is true, but also the rivers that feed this bay come down from above Atlanta, and I studied their water usage. They're using twice as much water from those rivers as they were just 10 years ago. We're not getting the fresh water down here. I said, that doesn't sound like climate change. And then during the Gulf oil spill, the BP oil spill, they called for all the oystermen all over the Gulf of Mexico come there and get the oysters before the oil killed them. So they fished out the bay. And anyway, this is the kind of thing I found time after time. So at the end, I'm starting to convert some of these guys. And I wasn't meaning to, but anyway, it was a very enjoyable. I really got to respect some of these guys. I was not happy about having actors or actresses come in and be moderators for I said, what do they know about science? What do they know about? And I was surprised. They knew a lot. And they were a lot deeper than I thought. And I really got to appreciate and feel like I made a bunch of friends. Make a long story short, the last day, they fly in who's the number one physicist and mathematician supposedly in the world. And they in this beautiful setting overlooking the Boston Harbor, they're going to tape me and this guy in a conversation all day long, 8 hours. My daughter, they flew her in, and one actor, Ian Somerhalder, who canceled all of his taping and shooting for that day just to come and be a part of this. And so we're sitting there, the four of us, and they're just taping the thing all day. But they let me come out with all of my reasons for being a skeptic. So I started with the science, which I think it's some of the flakiest science I've ever seen. The math, got into the scandals, the politics, the psychology. Anytime there's group speak, James Cameron starts off the trailer for this series with, if 99% of all scientists agree, I just go, okay, where did you get that number? 99%. Nobody could tell me. So I went and took about 10 minutes during a break and did a little internet search, found out it was based on a University of Illinois study where they sent a poll out to 14,000 scientists. And you can make a poll say anything you want by the questions you ask. They asked 2 questions that it would be almost impossible for anybody to say no to. It was so stupid, only 10% of the scientists answered the poll, and only 5% of them were climate scientists, and they were using that as the basis of 99%. I said, this kind of flaky stuff I found throughout this thing, I'm not a scientist, but I love science. I love its benefits. I love what we get from it here, and I think true science and true Christianity should be best friends. We're both in pursuit of truth, and I don't think they are in conflict. Well, anything, I brought out the hypocrisy using the Keystone Pipeline. The one guy who is our president's number one consultant on climate change and the number one critic of the Keystone Pipeline was found to be a major investor in the rival pipeline that would go to Vancouver if the Keystone gets... And he's been going all over our country talking about all the terrible things this pipeline is going to do to the environment when he's using the same technology exactly on his pipeline. He had already made $1.5 billion on his investment, stood to make many billions more if Keystone got... Well, I get all this on tape. I go right down the line, these 5 major areas. I talk about group speak, and I talk about how that is almost always, when there's this pressure to conform, and what came out in ClimateGate from the UN, where the emails from the top people in the UN of how they were going to ostracize any scientists who did not toe the party line about climate change, how they would cancel grants to universities and all if they even hired one of these scientists. I mean, I said, truth has more dignity than that. This can't be, anyway, they said, take as much time as you want. And I was just digging down. I had the pictures from NASA of how the polar ice cap had grown 40% in the last year. And do you guys realize that? It grew 40% in 1 year. Polar bears are increasing. They're doing great. They're the main poster child for Almost everything here. Now, why is this major deception happening? Well, anyway, I'm sitting there, and I go on for about an hour, and then I stop, and I'm looking at the scientist. He's got a real poker face on, And I go, I can go as deep as you want in any 5 of these areas. But any comments you want to make now? He goes, yes, I'd like to say something. I totally agree with you on every single point. And he took off further than I did. He was outraged by the way science had been corrupted. And, it was a major thing. And I said, you're a real scientist. But no, really, he is. I got to know him pretty well. He had just come from addressing the British Parliament to our little deal there in Boston. But he's world renowned and doing a great thing. But we do have to stand. People ask me all the time, why would you even get involved with this group? I said, if we don't get involved, I said, they may not listen to me. They may edit this thing and make me look like the biggest idiot in the world. I said, but how are we going to be the salt or the light if we don't get engaged? Well, after the whole thing was over, you can't believe the emails I got from people saying, we're so thankful that you did not compromise your convictions. And so appreciate it. And then I went to the premiere just a little over a week ago up in New York. And it's a who's who of ultra-liberal politics, the big financiers, and movie, Hollywood people. Now, I'm thinking they're not going to want to see me coming. They're hoping I don't show up. I think my daughter and I were the only Christians in the whole. But I really had bonded with some of these people over the year working on something like that. And it was the opposite. One of the main producers grabbed me. It was take me all around to introduce me to everyone, wanted me to take pictures with him and his family. And I mean, it's just stuff like that. And I couldn't believe how open they were, and how over and over they said, we're so thankful that you would do this as a Christian and come and be a part of this. And then I'm standing up talking to this one lady that you would know her name if I said it, and this other woman who was, she's one of the leaders of the Sierra Club, environmental group. And I just quoted a scripture to them, and I felt power go out. And this one woman who you would know, she jumps back. She goes, I felt that. And the woman from the Sierra Club, she says, that almost knocked me down the stairs. And I turn around and look at everybody. There's about 500 people at this reception. And they're all staring at us. I felt like a wave went out and hit all of them. They're all looking like, what was that? And then I just felt an incredible anointing all night. And really, I had not felt an anointing like that in speaking since I was at the World Public Forum on Civilizations and Religions with heads of all these religions, almost none of which were Christians. Most were Muslims at that thing. But anyway, I'm sitting there and I go back to my room after this. I said, Lord, I didn't think you'd go to something like that. I mean, why this power? He said, because these are my friends. And I said, Lord, you don't ever disagree with the Lord. He knows what he's talking about. I said, Lord, they don't even know you. He said, yeah, but they're my friends. And he said, friends have things in common. They love the same things. He said, and they love something that a lot of my people disregard, my creation. He said, I love you more than the sparrows, but I love the sparrows too. And he said, some of these are more aligned with me in some areas, even though I think the whole climate change thing is a ruse right now. I think there's some truth to it. There always is some. But he said, their love for my creation, the environment, is something that I would that my people would really take up. And it was the first command given to man was cultivate this garden. Take care of this thing that I've given you. And it even says at the end of the book of Revelation, he will destroy those who destroy the earth. That's how serious he is about it. And I had throughout this, the taping this documentary, it wasn't all the time, but it was like once a month, go to this location, and we just did a lot of stuff. And if you watch that documentary, it's called Years of Living Dangerously. And it is one of the most powerfully done things. Matter of fact, if you got a guy that could play this little 2-minute clip, let me see if I may have this with me. You can see these are some of the most powerful movie makers in the world. And it's on this. It's called Years of Living Dangerously. A 2-minute thing. You'll see the power they have in conveying their message. Some of it, I don't think, you'll see it's almost all trying to appeal to you emotionally. But I'm in that little trailer I'm the only one in the trailer who's challenging the position. Then at the end, my daughter is speaking at a pulpit there. But they filmed a conference. They filmed several services. And at our place, but this is being made into a big deal. If you haven't seen it or don't get it here, you will be hearing about it at some point, because they really invested big time in this thing. But we've got to have some discernment. Okay, this whole thing looks like a ruse to me, but God's in it. I saw him moving on these people, and they're calling me all the time now. And they want me to do other stuff with them. One of them, he was projected, he had more star power as an actor than Harrison Ford, Matt Damon, and all these others. One of the up-and-coming great actors. He wants me to read books together with him so we can talk about them and just stuff like that. And I just see God moving in this whole thing. And one of the last words Bob Jones had given to me was I was going to have authority in Hollywood. And can you just run that? Here it is.
99 scientists out of 100 say climate change is real and it's only going to get worse. So
all you prophetic.
99 scientists out of 100 say climate change is real and it's only going to get worse. So if you were sick and you got 100 doctors and 99 of them said you had to have an operation, would you get another opinion? I don't think so.
Our world is changing faster and more dramatically than ever before.
Not true. Global warming ended in 1998. I'll show you the data for it.
There's so many political agendas, there's been so many exaggerations that it's brought a lot of confusion.
Ice melt, rising sea levels.
There is no more fire season. We have wildfires all year round.
Why do you think Republicans have gotten in this spot of distrusting the scientists?
Methane coming out of pipes all over the country. That's a big deal.
At what point does this become the priority?
Fire commencing.
Everybody thinks that this is about melting glaciers and polar bears. I think it's a big mistake. This is 100% of people's story. So I've teamed up with the legendary Jerry Weintraub.
The hurricanes are twice as bad as they ever were, and ice is melting where it's not supposed to melt.
This is a lake?
Yes.
The world is changing, and it's all because of global warming, I think.
Jerry and I are putting together the ultimate cast. You'll see these stars like you've never seen them before. They're going to be the correspondents, meeting the people affected by this. These are the stories of people whose lives have been transformed by climate change.
We used to have seasons back then. Right. Now we don't.
Could Yemen run out of water?
Yes, possible.
This was the first city to run out of water.
Water just took everything away.
Climate disruption is not a political issue, it's a moral issue.
I don't know what causes it. It doesn't matter. It's happening.
This is the biggest story of our time, and this is the time to tell it.
Nothing could have prepared us for what we saw.
You feel some power on that? But a lot of it's not true. You know? But there is something to God's in it somehow. Now, climates change. We know that. The reason fossil fuels are found under what are mostly deserts now is the climate changed. You know, the fossil fuels were created by unbelievable amounts of vegetation. So at one time, those weren't deserts. But, you know, that happens. Stuff happens. Climates change and all. But are we doing it? Now, this is what I found out. You know, mankind is dumping about 7 billion tons of CO2 into the atmosphere every year. That's a lot. You know how much a ton of air is? Think about it. Now think about 7 billion tons a year. Sounds like a lot, right? Well, it is a lot, but nature is dumping about several hundred times more than mankind. Matter of fact, all of mankind's dumping of CO2 from the burning of fossil fuels and everything together is about 3.5% of the CO2. Cows passing gas because of the way they chew their cud and is putting almost as much into the atmosphere as mankind. I said, okay, let's make the cows quit farting. I said, why pick on man? Why is our CO2 worse than theirs? You know, and isn't CO2? And I mean, I'm just saying. But the point is that CO2 is plant food. You know, during the times when the fossil fuels were created, there was many times the CO2 in the atmosphere we have now, and the plants loved it. They call it greenhouse gas because they pump CO2 into greenhouses because plants love it. It is plant food. And a reasonable study that I think was probably the most accurate and is now being embraced by even many of the most wild-eyed climate change proponents is that over the last half century, the temperature has increased by about 0.6 of 1 degree Fahrenheit. It's changing so slow and it's so minor, they said, we do not need to get hysterical about this. Now, these folks trying to make it the biggest issue in the world today. And I believe that is really out of line at best. And there are a lot of things, political agendas and a lot of other things behind it, but we don't even know if it's bad or not. I know up here in Canada, most of you think this is a good thing. Let's warm this planet up some. You know, it's but you know, stuff happens. But this is going to be a major issue. Right now, it is a major issue, maybe one of the biggest issues with the youth. But more important than that, and one thing I think, you know, it is something we need to have attention on, but not maybe our main attention, but is it a big issue with God? And, you know, because I think if I gave a great gift to one of my kids and they just threw it away and trashed it and didn't take care of it, you know, that would be really hurtful, and I'd be prone not to give them much else. I think the way we treat the gifts is the way we show the respect we have for the giver. And God has given us an awesome gift in His creation. And we need to respect it. We need to not hurt it. How can we be pro-life and not be pro-all life? How can we not be provoked and disturbed by the loss of any species? Now, there are extremes. And I don't like the extremes. I think the extremes tend to, do more damage to almost every movement than even its adversaries. And there are extremes within the movement, but even so, this is an issue I think we've got to take up. And this is why it has relation to us now. I had never thought of this before. The Lord's going to return because if he didn't, it says no flesh would remain. We would just wipe out everything. I had always assumed that was because of war, Armageddon, everything else. And this was a total new thought to me. No, it has a whole lot to do with the way we're destroying our environment. And I don't think fossil fuels are the main culprit there. There are other things, the mercury poisoning, there's all kinds of other things that just gets overlooked because of the climate change, to me, diversion. But we are required as Christians to address the major issues of our times. We're supposed to be the light of the world. We're supposed to have answers to the major issues of our times. If we're going to be the salt, we've got to stand up for these things. And I didn't particularly want to get involved in this. Even though I had a concern, I was scared, and I wanted to know the truth. It was just the way the Lord led me in this thing. And since then, I've made a lot of relationship. I got to work with some of the best in the world at what they do. And I think it's part of my calling. But I tell you, we've got to get engaged. We can't complain about our governments if we're not engaged in being the salt and light in those things and taking a stand for the issues of the times. Well, let's be sure it's based on truth. Let's be sure it's based not just on political expedience or, anything else, that we're standing on the truth and that we are aligned with the Lord in his purpose. Because ultimately, he's going to win. He is going to win. Now, I think the sons of Issachar are especially gifted. Okay, they know the times, but they also know what Israel should do. We need a much bigger devotion to the gift of a word of wisdom than I think to just the gift of a word of knowledge. And knowledge fills the house. Gift of word of knowledge is real exciting, tends to bring the people out, but we need, it says wisdom builds the house. We need the gift of a word of wisdom, that's supernatural wisdom from above. And that will lead us to things. I felt that sometimes during this thing when I'm with scientists and areas way over my head, and I felt like the Lord showed me something, and I would just track down that way, and it would illuminate a major issue and a major cause of things that were changing climate temporarily or whatever. And the polar ice cap had been melting for a few years. I felt like the Lord showed me, follow the money. He said, you want to know who has the accurate models of climate and weather, go to Wall Street. They're betting billions of dollars on commodities. They're going to have they don't have a political dog in the fight. They want to know the truth because of all their investing in it. They want to know what, and they're going to have the accurate. And I went, had some friends, got in touch with the top one that Wall Street relies on as far as predicting weather 10 years out and things like this. And they had factors in building their models that the climate scientists had never considered. And their models were almost always right on. The climate change proponents haven't been even close to right yet in the models they've developed. When they said this is going to happen by 2005, it wasn't happening. Not even close. Unless they cooked the numbers, which we all found out what happened. But you understand what I'm saying? So anyway, I went to Wall Street. Two of the major factors melting the polar ice cap was called the Atlantic and Pacific decadal oscillations that may shift the Gulf Stream a little bit. One of them had shifted the Gulf Stream a little bit west, so they went further north and was melting the Gulf cap. This happens periodically. Last year, it shifted back to its normal state, and the ice cap grew 40% in 1 year. And all of a sudden, everything's... But I think we've got to be open for revelation and words of wisdom in all areas. This is what that Daniel company is about. They had understanding, they had wisdom, they had knowledge, and they had understanding in all areas of learning. And this is also a part of the company that God is raising up today. And I do believe Lance Wallnow has probably articulated it about as good as anyone I've ever heard in his 7 mountain strategy, where going into all the world didn't just mean geographical. Go into every field of knowledge as a missionary. Go into science, go into the media, go into government, go into entertainment, the arts, go into education. Know your mission and go as a missionary. And we have an absolutely unfair advantage. We have the Holy Spirit. We have the one that created everything. Has all answers. And that's, they thought, I don't want to deprive them of this delusion. They thought I was one of the... Ian Somerhalder is one of the actors they showed up there, was on the show, daily talk show like The View or something like that. And he was talking about the work we had done there, and he was talking about me. He showed some pictures of me and heritage and all this. And he said, this is the most intellectual, and he goes on about all my... And he was really pumping me up. I said, I fooled him because I got a few words of wisdom that made me look really good and really smart. I didn't know what I was talking about. We really do have an unfair advantage. Now, I do have a basis in science. I love science. I love physics. I love astronomy, and I've probably spent way too much time over the years, probably hours every week studying these. Never saw a degree because I was doing it out of sheer love. And I just love the learning, the knowledge. I feel like it's a revelation of how God did the creation. It's a revelation of Him. He's seen the creation. I love this stuff. I love science, and I hate to see it being corrupted. But you know where I got my revelation of understanding just how these corruptions get in? Studying the church. How easily we get deceived. How easily dogma and conformity to the dogma can start eclipsing a love for the truth and taking a stand for the truth. How easily we can start standing for certain positions out of political expediency rather than really having a basis of knowledge of the truth. And I study in church history, seeing what happened in our history. And what happens, I think, over and over, because we don't know history, we're doomed to repeat it. You see every new church plant going through the same mess. Maybe on a much smaller scale, but it's the same thing over and over. And that's how I present. I said, look, I said, one thing, I'm not writing off climate change, which I was resolved to stay open. I said, in spite of all this, I'm open. They said, well, why if you see everything this way? I said, because, we've had some Christians who were unsavory people with, I think a perverted zeal that promoted the gospel and would do it in a way that condemns everyone that doesn't agree with them. I said, we've had this throughout our history. We had much of our faith perverted for over 1,000 years during what the period called the Dark Ages, when it was against the law to read the Bible. It was actually capital punishment for reading the Bible during that period in Christian Europe. I said, but the truth of the gospel is still true. Even though really bad people, were promoting it and abusing it and using it for political purposes and everything, the gospel's still true. So I said, even though this is really being abused, I said, I'm not writing off that there's not some truth here. And but I said, we've got to handle the truth the right way. And we got to be devoted to truth and due process. And one thing, if you cut off debate, where they were making statements like all true scientists agree, I said that right there is the most unscientific statement you could probably ever make. The premise of science is challenge everything. When Einstein put out his theory of relativity, he wanted it shot down. He didn't want to believe some of it because it so upset some of his other convictions. He wanted, but that was the nature of science for much of the time. You put it out there and you want everybody to attack it from every direction to be sure it's true. And then when Einstein, it was actually Hubble who discovered the red shift, it totally blew Einstein's mind. And just about everybody else's when it was determined that the universe is actually expanding and not static. So there had to be a beginning at one point. So there had to be a beginner. And it really does prove the instantaneous beginning of the whole creation, and that even all of the energy in the universe today, that all the stars are burning and everything else did not exist, and in 1 nanosecond all of it that exists today existed. You say so there had to be somebody who did this. And this scientist, this last physicist I spent so much time with, and afterward, during the breaks and all, we spent a lot of time talking about all kinds of things, but we stayed in touch continually with emails and all. But he emailed me one time, and he told me when we were there in Boston, he says, I pray every day. I said, you believe in God? He says, no, I don't have faith. I said, but who do you pray to? He says, no, I don't need faith. He says, I have knowledge. He says, you can't do what I do and not see God. He says, it's impossible. He says, so I know there's a God. It's not a matter of faith with me. I know there's a God. I said, who are you praying to? He says, that I don't know. I said, what are you praying? He says, I just pray thank you. This is so marvelous. This is so wonderful. This is so awesome, what you've created and given to him. I just thank him every chance I get. He said, which is usually several times a day. I said, that's wonderful, but why don't you ask him his name? I saw him jump back a little bit. I don't know if I want to know his name. But you can't study the creation without seeing the Creator. It's not possible. It really isn't. And but did I talk to you last time I was here about the 10 ways the world was going to be destroyed? It was on the History Channel. Did it? Okay. Well, you need to hear this. This was a History Channel. You guys get the History Channel. It was a special run on the History Channel, the 10 ways the earth is going to be destroyed, which is one of the most encouraging videos I've seen in a long time, or documentaries. And they started with the most, least likely, moving towards the most likely way the whole earth would be destroyed. Okay, and it starts out with gamma burst from space. You understand what they are? This will be really encouraging to me. Trust me. Will you go with me on a little ride? And this is important. Okay, remember when we were in the Cold War with Russia and we put up satellites to track their nuclear tests? And then our satellites started getting hit with gamma bursts from space that were more powerful than the gamma bursts from Earth after a nuclear bomb went off. So they track where these explosions coming from in space, and this led to the, understanding the black holes. So much understanding came out of this, the supernovas, but there were explosions in space, sometimes as much as 4 to 5 billion light years away. And you know how far light year is? That's how far light travels in a year. They were saying 4 to 5 billion light years away. There were explosions so big they were hitting the earth with more power than nuclear explosions on the earth. And you know how it was like unbelievable power out there. Then they tracked this all the way down. This includes, you know what? If we were not being hit by those gamma bursts, we would not exist. Those gamma bursts from space start the whole food chain on Earth. This is how interrelated and interconnected everything is. You know, they used to think that lightning from thunderstorms was created by the positive and negative forces, powers trying to reach each other. Then they found out every time a thunderhead, a bolt of lightning goes off, it's because a gamma burst is hitting the thunderhead. Can be up to 30,000 times a minute all over the earth. But if that lightning were not hitting the earth, the lightning does something to the earth, the ground, that does something to the nitrogen so that plants can absorb the nitrogen and starts the whole food chain. So if we weren't being hit by these gamma bursts, the Lord sent a gamma burst 5 billion light years or 5 billion years ago to hit us just at the right time so we could eat a hamburger today. I mean, it's unbelievable, from all over space. Then they said these things are so frequent in the universe that if you know how big the Milky Way is, our galaxy, it's unbelievable, millions of light years across. If one of these gamma bursts went off in our third of the Milky Way, it would destroy all life on Earth within 20 seconds, right down to the cellular level. That's how powerful they are. They said, how we haven't been hit by a close one, the odds of us making it this long. And of course, they're doing a much better job. It made me feel like I know I had to dodge 7 gamma bursts just to make it to work today. How I survived today from those gamma bursts trying to get me. I mean, it was unbelievable. Then the next one is even more likely to hit us. They studied the asteroids and the frequency with which they're hitting the planets and everything, and how many times over we should have been destroyed by asteroids. Why we haven't been hit yet? But I know I probably had at least several meteors almost hit me today already. They're out there. I mean, it gives you this sense like, good night, how did we make it through another day? Then they go on from that. You know, the volcano under Yellowstone, they thought it was the biggest ever, maybe on the earth. You know, there are more geysers in Yellowstone than the rest of the earth combined. It's because it's got the biggest magma. They said if that went off in its full power, all life on earth would be destroyed within 2 weeks. They said the oceans of the earth would be the pH level of battery acid in just a few days. It would destroy all life on earth. Then they found out this year there's 3 times as much under that volcano than they originally, it's 3 times bigger than they thought. And why this hasn't gone off, we're so overdue. But do you get the picture? The whole universe is trying to kill us. This is only the first 3. They go into 10 ways, and each one becomes more likely to do us in. After 3, I don't know how we made it through today. There's no way. The odds against us making it another day are almost incredible unless we're being kept. We're being kept. There's someone so awesome, so powerful, that he is We're being kept. And we can trust him. You know, he is even in control of even all of our little orbits and all of the stuff. We don't know how many times today we survived being killed at a stoplight, or you just don't know. But we have to trust this Creator is so awesome. Our God is so big. And you take the whole earth, we're not even a speck of dust in the universe, comparatively. But he loves us so much, it says he's going to come to the earth and dwell on the earth among men. He wants to live here with us, and he's even given us his Spirit to live in us. This incredible God. We're being kept. So we got to walk in faith. We've got to walk in trust. And we have someone we can trust. We can trust. But as things get shakier and shakier on the earth, remember the whole universe obeys him. He upholds the universe by the word of his power. I remember one time I was just overwhelmed with all of the different missionaries and ministries we have, and just trying to oversee our whole ministry. And I just said, we've got 8 major departments. I said, if I gave all my time to any one of them, it wouldn't be enough. I was just feeling so overwhelmed. And then the Lord just said, I uphold the universe with my power. I can help you with that little ministry. And I said, help, Lord. I think that's one of the most effective prayers you got. Help, please do help me with this little ministry. He said, okay. You know what he did? I'm sitting there at my desk. And he said, I'm going to help you right now. And he came into the room. Now, I've had visitations where I saw him. I didn't see him this time. I didn't have to. He entered my office. His presence was so powerful. And it's just like he entered, and he didn't. I've had him before where he literally came up and laid hands on me. This wasn't one of those. He just came in, his manifest presence, stood in my office for I estimate 1 minute. And then it's like he was gone. But I was so energized by that 1 minute. I was saying, Lord, you got to give me more to do. What are we going to do after we save this world? Are there other worlds for us to go save? What is going on? I was just, wham, Isn't this what happened to Peter? He goes, remember all the disciples are out fishing and haven't caught anything after Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection. And finally, the Lord says, cast on the other side. They catch so much they can't handle it. And John says, it's the Lord. So Peter says, throws on his cloak and throws himself into the sea. And most scholars said there's no way he could have swam. You can't swim with those cloaks on that they had back then. They say he must have walked on the water to Jesus. But anyway, he goes up and spends just a little bit of time in the presence of the Lord personally. And it says all the others were struggling to get this huge catch of fish in. All of them are struggling with it. And Peter, after spending just a few moments in the presence of the Lord by himself, gets up and goes down and by himself pulls the whole load of fish in. One moment in his presence is worth so many years of our own struggle and our own trying to figure it out. And so many. It's the Lord. Now, I'm saying this because with all the things coming upon the earth, we are, I believe, could see this year. I think this is one of the real signs of the blood moons, which are also called harvest moons. We're going to have so many fish we're not going to know what to do with. And we're going to be struggling just to get them in. There's so many. They're going to be jumping in the nets, jumping in the boat. They're going to be, you can talk about popcorn and they'll get saved. You can, there's just, when you're in revival like that, it just happens. And this is a warning. It will be exciting. It will be fun, but it will also be one of the most difficult things we could ever do. We're not going to make it if we are not intimate with the Lord himself. We cannot do this in our own strength. We cannot navigate through these times with our own wisdom. We've got to have supernatural wisdom from above. We need words of knowledge. We need to know what's going to happen and when, but then we need to know, what do we do? How do we get ready for it? And what I'm saying is we've got to have the Lord. Everything that can be shaken will be shaken, and the only thing on this planet that cannot be shaken is the kingdom. We have a kingdom that cannot be shaken, and the kingdom is the domain of the king. It is the domain of the king that we've got to live in now. We've got to build our lives on now, or we're going to shake like everybody else. And we are in Daniel 2. All the kingdoms of this world are tottering and collapsing. The statue that represented all man's kingdom, it's coming down. There's a little rock that's growing into a mountain. And it's going to keep growing until it fills the earth. We got to build on that rock. We got to live on that rock. And we got to preach the gospel of the kingdom that is coming. And you know, that gospel means good news, not bad news. Our message is not, it's the end. Our message is, it's a new beginning. The whole earth is going to be born again. The king is going to come. The lion's going to lie down with the lamb again. Children play with cobras. No more pain, no more disease, no more dying. The king is coming. It's the greatest news the earth has ever heard or ever will hear. And it is true. We've got to preach the gospel of the kingdom. We've got to do it from a position of living in the kingdom. Now, I shared this before. The key to the kingdom is in Matthew 6. Seek first the kingdom and his righteousness, and everything else will be added to you. And that means we cannot continue to make major decisions based on our desires, our wants, expediency, or anything else. We've got to start making every major decision on, Lord, what is your will? What is the purpose of the kingdom? As the Lord showed me, and I shared with you before, he showed me most of his people were out of his geographic will. They were not in his geographical will. And this is just one area where we need to be in his will. He said the reason was most of his people had made their decisions about where they lived based on where they wanted to live, close to neighbors, friends, maybe geography they wanted to live by, maybe where the best job was, the job opportunity. Almost every reason rather than seeking first his kingdom. Lord, where do you want me to live? I've talked to so many people. They move to us. Why are you living where you live? Usually it's because they can't find a church that they fit into. I said, okay, that's indication you're in the wrong place. It's not the church's fault. Don't blame the church. You're not in the right place, or you would fit into his body. Remember, we talked about koinonia last night, how vital that is. Why are you living where you live? Where's where the job was? Where does it say you should make a decision like that based on where the best job opportunity is? How's your job going? Going great. How's your family doing? Well, I'm divorced now. My kids are all doing drugs. Everything else is falling apart. The job's doing great. I said, would you trade doing not as well with your job for all the other things? In a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. All of our major decisions have got to be, that is the key to living in the kingdom. seeking first the kingdom purposes in all of our major decisions. Not only where we live, what we do for a living, what our profession is. I mean, it's hard to find almost anyone today who's actually working in the area of their study, where they have degrees in. Why don't you seek the Lord for what you were supposed to study? Do you understand what I'm saying? We can't go on living like this and make it through what's coming. Because everything that can be shaken will be shaken. The good thing is, repentance can change everything. We may have wasted 30, 40 years of our life. That can be turned around. He can restore the years that the locust has eaten. You'd be amazed. With him, a day is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is a day. He can make up in one day what you wasted in 50 years. He can make it up. But we've got to change some basic issues about our lifestyle. If he's not first, church is not meant to be an appendage to our life. Serving the Lord is not meant to be something we do a couple of hours a week. Many come to know the way, a few more are going to know some truth, but if we don't know him as our life, I don't think we really know the way or the truth either, because the way is not a formula, it's a person. The way is not just getting our doctrines lined up right, even though we want accurate doctrine, but it's a person we're following. If we don't know that person, the way and the truth, the person that is the way and the truth, and we don't know that person as our life, are we really walking in the way or the truth? You can know all doctrine accurately. The demons know a lot of doctrine better than Christians do. They know Jesus, they know the atonement. They know that Jesus died for our sins better than a lot of Christians do. It's not just knowing our minds, but knowing in our hearts. Romans 10:10 says it's by believing in our heart that it results in righteousness. And if we believe something in our heart, we're living it. It's not just a doctrine we believe in. It's a life. Is he our life? So, if you don't want to do it this way, there's an asteroid with your name on it. There's a gamma burst that started about 5 billion light years away with your name on it. No, he doesn't act. But we are in danger. I mean, it is, when you can still get that video from the History Channel. It's called The 10 Ways the World is Going to Be Destroyed or something. It is one of the most encouraging things, but it is unbelievable how we make it through another day. It is absolutely supernatural because the whole universe really is trying to kill us. And it can't touch us. It can't touch us because we're kept. We're being kept. We have an awesome God. What do we have better to do than to give him everything? We get to do this. These are the greatest times I think there really has ever been to walk with God on the earth. We get to be here during the end of this age and the transformation of an age to prepare the way for the Lord and to preach his gospel. Let's don't waste a day that we've been given. Thank you.